Hey there, YouTubers. Right, so in this video, I'm going to try and help you figure out what 12th gen motherboard you need, okay? So, starts with the CPU. Have you figured out what CPU you want, okay? Now, looking at Intel's website here that helps you understand the processor number and name. If you've got a K in it, it's unlocked. That CPU's overclockable. If you have an F in it, that CPU requires a graphics card, okay? So, you know, for the most part, gaming-wise, we care about i3, i5, i7, i9, okay? Pentium, Celeron, 12th gen, not really that great for gaming. You can do some gaming on it, but it's pretty much terrible, okay? So, looking at that, folks, let's look at the i7 processors. Some of these are not meant for desktops. These are laptops. So the ones we care about, i7-12700F, i7-12700, i7-12700K, i7-12700KF, all right? So this last one, you can tell it's overclockable and it requires a graphics card. This one is overclockable and it has integrated graphics. Up here, this guy, the i7-12700F, requires a graphics card. This one is a locked processor and has integrated graphics. Okay, so those are examples that you'll see. i9's going to follow the same similar thing. Some of the i5s, very similar to what I just showed you, as well as i3. So once you have figured out the CPU, folks, then we can start looking at our actual motherboards. Now you see in Intel's thing here, it has these product briefs, okay? Let's look at the Z690. And actually, before we do that, across the top, I've got Z690, H670, B660, H610. That is the order that these CPUs from best to worst, okay? Now, inside these other links, you'll find out all kinds of information about the different chipsets. Some places you can go and compare the different chipsets. Just realize that, you know, the best Z690 and the best H670, pretty much the main difference is going to be that the Z690, you can overclock it with a K-type chip, okay? Now, the other ones, they have other features that they're missing. So useful to go in here and read all this stuff if you wanted to. You know, we don't really have that much time to cover it all in here, but that is a place you can go to find out specific details about the different chipsets, okay? Now, most expensive motherboards out there should be the Z690s, followed by the high-end H60s, followed by B660s, followed by H610s. You're going to find a lot of different features on these things, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to ask yourself questions. Do I want this? Okay. Now, let's say we've selected. We'll go back here. An i7-12700K, okay? Out of these four choices, the only motherboard that I really should be considering is the Z690. That processor will work in these, but not as good as it will work in a Z690. So bam, we've got, you know, motherboards. The real high-end stuff isn't even shown in here. The cheapest you can find one of these is about $180, okay? Now, let's go back here. I've picked the i7-12700. I have a choice between the H670, the B660, and the H610. I decide I want an H670, if I can even find one here. And they don't have all the good stuff yet, but here is one example. Okay. Now you're going to find, folks, you have to make a decision. Just make sure it's still recording. on a lot of things. Do I want Wi-Fi? Okay, so in my title, I'm looking for Wi-Fi, or I am looking, let's show you the other example. I'm looking for Wi-Fi, or I want to see AC in the name, okay? Like this, Z690UD AC. I've got to make a decision on PCIe 5.0. You see that in the title right there. Now, we're not going to go into heavy detail on this, but, you know, basically, this, you know, some of these links will tell you stuff, but Intel spells it out for you. 32 gigatransfers compared to 16 for PCIe 4. Only thing is, right now, folks, there are no PCIe 5.0 graphics cards available for sale. Okay, so this is like future proofing. Do you want to spend the money now for added performance later? RAM. DDR5 is really expensive. Is it worth it? That's a good question, right? Better bandwidth, faster. You see 6,000. That is some, you know, seriously fast RAM there. Now, is it worth it? I couldn't tell you. Will I buy this stuff eventually, right? When the price comes way down. So that's something you got to figure out. Most of those motherboards will take DDR. If they take DDR5, they'll take DDR4. You could invest in that for the future, okay? Now, size of the motherboard, folks. You need to understand what sizes. So you got 4 sizes basically: EATX, ATX, Micro ATX, Mini ITX. You know, you're going to have less features on an ITX, the most features on EATX, okay? So what does that matter? You also have to know, hey, how big a case do I want? If I'm going full tower, you're going to look it's going to look hokey having a Mini ITX motherboard in there. Not to say it won't fit, but it'll look hokey. If you're going with a mid-tower, you know, you can get ATX, Micro ATX, Mini ITX in it. Full, you can get all 4 of these. A mini tower, only these 2 on the right. An ITX case, only the Mini ITX, okay? So make sure you understand that. And make sure you understand, you know, the more to the right you are, the less features you're going to have. The more to the left you are, the more features you're going to have. You know, this should be on this side of ATX, but it's not. So, going back, folks, now we have, let me just give you an example. I want a full-size case. I want the i7-12700. So I'm going to either pick the H670 or maybe I will look at the B660. I don't care if I have PCIe 5.0. I don't care if I have DDR5. And I don't care if I have Wi-Fi. So there are some choices on here. It's pretty, actually pretty expensive, considering you can get Z690 for the price of some of these. Excuse me for yawning. So if the title has B66M in it, that means it is a Micro ATX board. If there's an I in the title, if it says B66I, that is ITX. Okay, if there's no letter behind it, most likely that means that it is a full size. Like right over here, this one has an M, this one does not. Okay, so I'm going to pick this guy. It seems to be a good price. It does have Wi-Fi. I said I didn't need it, but there's a lot of nice features on here. Some of this audio stuff, you have to decide whether, hey, do I need that? You know, are you going to hook this up to a stereo? Do you want 2.5 for your LAN? You know, or is 1 good? The video connectors, if you're not going to get a graphics card, is HDMI DisplayPort all I need? You see also Type-C connector here, okay? Maybe I want to hook up my phone or other devices. Lots of things to pick from, folks. Now, things we haven't really talked about. How many graphics cards do you want, you know? Are you going to use one to record with? This one has 2. So that, you know, a lot of factors to determine. Most of you, if you're just starting off and you're watching this video, that means you probably don't have a clue. You don't need a whole lot of those slots, most likely. But in my opinion, it's always good to have at least 2, okay? Now, what else, folks? So many other things to talk about. You know, quality of motherboards. I don't know if there's an article out there that would tell you the best quality, but I can tell you some of the, you know, the lesser quality is BioStar, ASRock, all right? Some of the Asus boards. But then on the other side, Asus does have much better stuff within their product catalog. So MSI, Gigabyte, you know, all these different companies to pick from. Do your homework, you know, which ones are rated higher. You can read the reviews. SSD slots. How many M.2s do you want? That's also something to look at, you know. Back in the day, you'd be lucky if you got 1. Now, a lot of these motherboards will provide 3 of them, and maybe even some that provide 4. So understanding how many M.2s do I need, that's an important thing. Do I want, you know, like RGB lighting on my motherboard? Picking out a motherboard that has that, if that's something you want. So many things to factor in. Some of the motherboards are limited in the SATA connections, right? So how many hard drives do you want? That also factors in. You see this up here? This is a B660 with 2 1x8s. You will find some of the motherboards maybe only have a 1x8. Some will have a 1x8 and a 1x4. That's going to allow you to adjust the power limits for your CPU and get potentially more multi-core performance out of it. Another thing to look at to see if you need it, okay? Or, excuse me, something you need to go into this knowing that, hey, I want the most out of my CPU that I can get. Then you potentially will want to get dual 1x8s. You might also want a Type-C Charlie connector on your computer case. Well, to make that work, you've got to have a motherboard that supports that, such as this one, okay? Lots of things to factor in. If your case has all USB 3.0s on it, let's say there's 4 of them, you'll need a motherboard that has 2 USB 3.0 connectors, okay? RAM clearance, you know, other issues that you might have with certain CPU coolers, those are things you can investigate as well. Folks, that's going to do it. There's a lot of other stuff to talk about. I think that's, you know, basics to help you hopefully figure out what motherboard you want. Thanks for checking out the video. Please like, please subscribe.